welcome back. I'm Tedward, and today, thanks to Acton Auto Boutique in Acton, Massachusetts, we're driving the king of the hill. This is the C4 Corvette ZR-1, and I have always wanted to drive the ZR-1, especially since we drove that twin-turbo Callaway C4 a while back. This is a 1994 model, meaning that it has all the goodies and upgrades. When the ZR-1 first came out in the C4 generation, had 375 horsepower, but this bad boy has 405. It's made into a 6-speed ZF manual transmission, and it is a rocket and a monster. Now, 405 horsepower in 2024 may not sound that wild, but you got to remember, a Z06 in the C5 generation had 405 horsepower, and this is way ahead of that. Not to mention the fact that Lotus came in and helped design this car. In fact, this engine, the LT5, is a proper technological masterpiece, especially for GM at the time. This has dual overhead cams. It's got like 12 quarts of oil, I assume dry subsystem, in order to make that all work, but they made this into a proper track weapon. It was initially thought to be created to become the fastest car in the world. Now, unfortunately, they had other ideas at the time. You know, in the late 80s, early 90s, that's when you start getting the McLaren F1, and this is certainly not a 250-mile-an-hour car, but it is cool. In addition to its wildly exciting engine, it also has adjustable suspension. Now, it still has a single rear leaf spring across the back. This is the closest you get to a Porsche 959 suspension than anything else. It's pretty nuts. So keep in mind, this is a lot of exciting stuff that you see in kind of every car today, but in 1989 through the end of production of the ZR-1, this was a big, big deal. Gluing us to the road, up front is a 275 section tire, and in the rear, a 315 section tire. Sorry about traffic today, man. It's just my normal spot got blown up, and I didn't really want to get hit by a car over there. So anyway, I'm really excited to show you around, take you for a ride. One of the wildest things about this car that I noticed is the fact that, sure, this roof comes off, but there's another roof panel in the back. Let me open this up for you. So if we open this glove box, this little guy here, sorry, I'm doing this from the wrong side. Take two. If we open this from over here, you get your typical rear hood release, the hatch that you see from GM. Normally that's in a glove box, but then up comes our glass hatchback, revealing another roof. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is this one clear? I can't tell. I think it is, but I guess you have a choice. Now that's annoying, because if you wanted to take one of them off, you can't. You have to leave one at home. But anyway, while we're back here, here's our fuel filler, and let's take a look under the hood. And under here is the crown jewel of the ZR-1. Unlike anything I've ever seen in a Corvette, this is the friggin' coolest. You've got a 4-cam 32 valve indicated on the top, and man oh man, even though this weighs a little more than the engine that was in the standard C4 Corvettes, I think it's worth it, because they made this so it could handle low-end load by changing the primary and secondary throttles as well as intake runners. There's a lot of cool tech in this in order to make it run properly, and it's really fun to see the yellow Bilstein, Bilstein. I don't remember how it's spelled. If it's I-E, it's Steen. If it's E-I, it's Ein. So sorry about that. I am just having one of those days. I'm very cold. I would really like to go for a drive. So why don't we just get in and do that? Because the reality is this thing sounds absurdly fun. To start our ZR-1, we've got our key in the ignition. We'll get our foot in there, and now you've got this big control panel up here. It says service LTPWS. That's the low tire pressure warning system. That will go out as we're driving, so not to worry there. But pretty cool that this, as an OBD1 car, has that kind of technology. In addition, this has a digital display for our speed, our fuel, and our odometer. But unlike the Callaway twin turbo Vette that we drove before, it's not a full digital cluster. So we still get like a normal type of tachometer and some other gauges, which I much prefer, because it was really hard to see the tachometer in that car. We've got a flyaway handbrake, which is kind of funny to see in a Corvette. I don't remember if that's normal in C4s or whatever, but let's see. throw our headlights back down, and let's go for a drive. We've got our 6-speed ZF manual gearbox. Our reverse lockout is right here, typical for Corvettes, and unlike the Callaway car that we drove before, this doesn't have that wild 4+2 situation where you're pressing and unpressing for that torque converter to give you low and high gears. This is a much more normal and better situation as far as I'm concerned, and down here, this is cool. Engine power, normal and full, I believe. Yes, I see the light for full, so we've got full power, the full 405. So let's get out there. We're warmed up. Down here, we've got our ride control, so we're in Tour. Why don't we throw it to Sport? Firm it up just a little bit. It's a monster. It's so responsive and instant. This feels so much more modern than 94. Like, this feels so good. This is what cars are supposed to drive like. This ZR-1 is no joke. This is king of the hill. But it does not have a narrow urethra or a small butt. Big wide tires, and yikes, this thing is just outrageously good. Throttle response is instantaneous. Now, whatever this exhaust is, it's a bit droney. It definitely does not like that super low kind of load. So if we put it in 6 here, for example, yeah, that's going to start to give you a little bit of drone. But it sounds so good. My mind's properly blown. This is a much more exciting car to drive than that Callaway was. This is much more me. Very antisocial. I'm driving into some like normal roads where normal people might exist, and I feel like I'm a criminal. I just feel like I'm driving around like a criminal. I'm driving around in a car that's purpose-built to do criminal activity. But it doesn't just feel like a big lump of an engine. It actually feels cohesive and together. Yeah, if you're a Corvette guy, you gotta go get yourself the ZR-1. This thing is so nuts. The steering weight's up really nicely. It's a little on the heavier side, more than I would have expected for the car, but feels appropriate. The brakes, they're functional, but they're not like big monster stoppers or anything like that. It's kind of surprising, actually, to see these brakes on this car, because they're still just like, you know, they look like single pistons. I'm not really sure, maybe they're double, but they're just little guys. They're not like some big fancy Brembo and stuff, and that's kind of indicative of the time. I feel like if you had this car today and you were gonna go and do some sort of upgrading to it, that's one of the things you might do. You might go put some bigger brakes on it, but remember, you're on a 17-inch wheel. How much are you gonna fit? Listen to that. So one thing that just happened, which is really exciting, is traction control kicked in. Traction control kicked in, and I swear it pushed the throttle pedal away from the floor. That's nuts. Not the early cars, the early 89s did not have traction control. I think that was maybe a 91 upgrade or a 92 upgrade, but still, I am blown away that this car has traction control. That works pretty much as well as like the traction control in, let's say, an E46 M3 or something of that nature. Like those, my E39 M5 has like really lame traction control, and this seems like not that bad. It's hard not to be a criminal in this car. It encourages it. Oh my goodness. The thing I'm most surprised about with this car is this engine is just available to you constantly. There's never a moment where you don't feel like you have torque or power. They did such a good job of making every bit of this RPM range usable. ZR-1. That's my new favorite thing. Modern ZR-1s haven't come out yet. We don't have the C8 ZR-1 yet, but we did have a C7 ZR-1, and it was too much. It was over the top. ZR-1 is always the top of the range for these Corvettes, and the newest one is probably going to be, you know, 1,000 horsepower or something outrageous. It's probably going to have some wild version of the engine, maybe even some hybrid drivetrain stuff to really boost it up and make it like above and beyond anything anyone's ever imagined. But what's great is that this C4, while yes, it's fast and it's a lot, it's not too much. I bet it was too much feeling at the time. I bet a lot of people didn't have this kind of power at their disposal for the money. And remember, the money, oh my goodness. A normal C4 Corvette cost around, I don't know, 36 grand. This ZR-1 package costs like $32,000. You practically doubled the price of the car to get a ZR-1 over a standard car. So I can't imagine a whole lot of people opted for that. That's next level. But the thing is, I genuinely think it's worth it. This is an outrageous car. It's an outrageous package. Something else they did, there's 2 injectors per cylinder. So there's one set of injectors that's for like smaller amounts of fuel, and then there's another set of injectors for like high RPM, high load, just dumping and pouring fuel into this thing. So it's really set up kind of like the naturally aspirated version of an FD RX-7, where you've got the twin turbos and you've got the sequentials, where you've got a little guy and a big guy. Everything in this car is designed to be like, hey, we're going to be cool at partial throttle and low load and low RPM, and then we're going to be obliterating everybody at high load and high RPM. The Callaway didn't make me want one. This makes me want one. Got to use a little bit of self-restraint today, just because A, it's cold, it's like 35 degrees, and B, there's some residual salt on the road, making it a little even slipperier than it is, just because of the lack of traction on a summer performance tire. But it's still easy to drive. I'm not afraid of this car at all. Be nice and gentle here. No, you got to keep walking, because I could use more room. Don't want to scare the dog. Greyhounds are skittish as it is. You don't want to blast by them in a ZR-1. Oh my God. What? want to drive this thing really fast. Everything syncs up really nicely too. Like the clutch weight, it's perfect. It's heavy enough to let you know it's there. I can feel the bite point. And then the throttle mapping, it responds just the way I want it to. I don't have to adjust myself in order to get the rev match. I know where it's going to be. It just is built by drivers for drivers. And this must have been the most fun project in the world to work on. Oh, fully in love. The gearbox is solid. It just always wants to take a gear. You can throw a lot at it. You can really push and shift fast if you'd like. That's not true of all sports cars. I mean, the BMW people surely knew. The Volkswagen people surely know that when you really try to rush a gear, it sometimes doesn't go so well, and it's not very happy to do it. And if it is happy to do it, it won't be happy to do it for very long. This ZF feels like you could just slam gears forever. We'll take our sweet time. The roads are for everybody, and yeah, we're not trying to get in any head-on collisions because we want to get around to cyclists. We got to respect the drive. So I'm gonna go bring this car back to Acton Auto Boutique, begrudgingly, because I think I fell in love with it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I thought I was gonna get into a car that felt dated. I thought I was gonna get into a car that felt like, well, I think I have to put myself in the shoes of somebody in 1994 in order to understand why it was great. And in fact, I did not. In 2024, this is great. This is very great. This is what I want out of a vehicle. The other day I said everybody who designs cars should be forced to drive the 1960 Alfa Romeo Giulietta Spider Veloce or Sprint Veloce. And now I'm thinking anybody who's making like a performance car, a muscle car, something that's out there to thrill with some power, they need to be driving this. I'm hoping that whatever comes from GM in the future with the ZR-1 feels just as intuitive, tactile, and exciting as it did back here in the C4 days. I know there was a C3 ZR1. I don't know if it really matters. It didn't make many of them. It was kind of a negligible car. This was the car that really changed the game. This was the car that made a name for the top dog, the king of the hill, Corvette. So, thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one.